business profits will be up at a 20 to 25% annual rate. That's important because it's those profits that are the source of jobs. I mean, Washington can beat on profits all they want, but you as business people know if you don't have any profits, you're not going to hire anybody. So profits mean jobs, and we think with the profit now, we'll see some job growth. The third underpinning is modest consumer spending. You know, you and I as consumers, we've been under a lot of pressure. Net worth has come down, our income growth has come down, and so we've tried to raise savings. And our savings rate has increased from close to 0 to almost 5%. We think it will go up a couple of more points, but spending growth can coexist with the rising savings rate so long as they both go up slowly. You know, I'm all for savings. I mean, gee, somebody stole my daughter's credit card a few months ago. We never did report it. I mean, whoever stole it was spending a lot less than she was. You know, underpinning number 4 on this is a synchronized global recovery that is being led by emerging markets and driven by China. Emerging markets, you know, Southeast Asia, China, India, Philippines, Indonesia, Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, South Korea, Latin America, those emerging markets are now 35% of the global economy, and they are growing at a 5, 6, 7% annual rate. That's supportive of the U.S. because their imports can be our exports. The last underpinning of this is low inflation, which means the Federal Reserve is going to be under not much pressure to raise interest rates, at least in the near to intermediate future. So if taking stock of our economy today, well, it looks kind of decent, right? Well, as we look forward into the future, we could take stock of our recovery. We think it's got the potential to turn into a sustainable economic recovery. It'll be driven by net exports because our trade deficit is shrinking. It's already shrunk 60%. And I know you'll never read this in the papers, but there's some slight chance we could even have a trade surplus in 2 or 3 years. It's also going to be driven by this inventory restocking that I alluded to a moment ago. It'll be driven by pent-up demand for durable goods and automobiles by consumers in this year. We think next year there'll be some pent-up demand for housing. It's also going to be driven by pent-up demand for capital spending by business, because the capital stock is shrinking as depreciation is higher than what companies are investing today. So there's going to be some of that. Some investment. We also believe that job growth is just about to happen. All the leading indicators of job growth, or almost all of them, point to job growth starting hopefully in January. We saw a little teeny increase in November and a partly weather-related decline in December. Also, consumer net worth or household net worth is now rising. Yes, it's still down from the peak, but for 2 or 3 quarters now it's been going up, and consumers should feel a little more confident. And last, interest rates should stay low, even though they're going to be trending higher. So as we take stock of the economy in the future, we think it's I would say, decent. It's reasonable, and there's a respectable chance that this can turn into a sustainable kind of recovery. Unfortunately, Iowa may be lagging in that recovery. Finance and insurance is a key industry here, and that was the epicenter of the recession that we had. And agriculture, you know, for 2 or 3 years we had some good prices. Those prices have come down now, so Iowa might lag slightly in that recovery. Well, so the state of the economy in the future might be pretty good. Let's look ahead a little bit and take stock of where we are kind of as a country. And you know, to some extent, I like to take a very long-term perspective on this and look at where we've come from in preparation for where we might be going. To take stock of where we are, let's go to Marietta, Oklahoma, and a catfish restaurant called McGeehee's Catfish House, just outside this little town. I understand they have great catfish, but it's really a unique place because right next to it is an airstrip, and it's only for this restaurant. People fly in from all over to have catfish. They land, they taxi up, and they walk to the hostess station. You know, it gives new meaning to the idea of going hundreds of miles for a catfish sandwich or something. There are also suburbs, there's at least 1 or 2, did you know, that cater to people who fly airplanes. You land on an airstrip in the suburb, and then there are miles of taxiways because you taxi to a hangar right by your house. Now, this is not the jet set ultra-rich. These are people with a penchant for flying, but they might be oil workers, professionals, professionals, small business owners, doctors, lawyers, software people, but they just happen to like to fly. Flying not your thing? Maybe it's golf or boating or fishing. Well, you're in luck because there are hundreds of thousands or millions of homes built on golf courses and along water. So you can combine today, with the affluence we have, combine your vocation with your avocation. The point of this is that what's unique about America is this tremendous increase in standards of living, not of the super rich, but of the ordinary people. In let's see, what year was that? 2000. In 2000, 13% of the home sales in the U.S. were for second homes. So people were combining vocation and avocation. In 2005, we think it was more like 20 to 25%. Now, ordinary people are having these kinds of increases in standards of living. Let me see, it was 2000, 23% of U.S. households had incomes of $75,000 or above. 23%, that's 63 million people. In 1890, much less than 1% of U.S. households had that kind of inflation-adjusted income. Inflation-adjusted. So inflation-adjusted per capita, per person income, well, that's doubled since 1960. That means every one of you here has twice the purchasing power of your parents or your grandparents. That means I think it was in the 1950s, 1956, you had to work 16 weeks to buy 100 square feet of house. Today, you work 14 weeks to buy 100 square feet of house. Which house would you rather have? One with brand new windows, a wonderful air conditioner, and a part of a garage and a patio and great heating? Or would you rather have the one in 1956? If anybody was here, went to the original McDonald's hamburger stand in the 1950s and bought a cheeseburger, you had to work half an hour to buy the cheeseburger. Today, you work for 3 minutes to buy a McDonald's cheeseburger. But that happens with lots of kinds of goods. Most all of the goods we buy, from phone calls to cars to furniture to clothing to food, less hours of work to buy those things. Well, how about the work week that it takes to do that? Well, think about the change over a century. In 1900, we worked 60, 65 hours a week. Today, it's 40 or less. And what kind of work did we do? Well, back then, only 47 or 43%, wrote that down, 42% of men were engaged in primary labor, meaning farming, mining, lumbering, fishing, that kind of stuff. 47% of women were domestic housewives. Today, we have almost more leisure time than we can use. Are you doing laundry today? Gosh, well, your washing machine will send you an email and tell you when it's done. In the year 2000, we spent $376 billion worth of money at American restaurants. That's more than our defense budget in that year. Gosh, maybe we can have guns and butter. Through 1940, most Americans didn't finish high school because they had to go to work. Today, 80% finish high school and a quarter get a college degree. How about medicine and health? Well, in 1900, the average life expectancy was 41 years of age. In 1929, somebody did a study and said, sometime in the future, we might be able to live to 65. Well, and that was the source of the Social Security bill and why they picked 65 as retirement age. Why? Because they never expected anybody to live that long. Now in 2000, the average life expectancy is 77. Today, it's higher than that. And the ladies in the crowd, you're going to outlive your spouse or your boyfriend by a few years. Cancer is in retreat. AIDS deaths are falling. Surgery is becoming much less invasive. Plastic surgery, can cover up any defect. The latest thing was, belly buttons. Infant mortality, 7 out of 1,000, down 40% from the 1980s. Sure, it's expensive. Would you trade what we get today for 1970s cost of health care? Oh, but you have to take 1970s health care. Would you take 1995 cost of health care? Oh, but you have to have 1995 health care. No, I don't think so. Years back, if you had arthritis, they give you a few aspirin in a wheelchair. There's almost nothing today that is not treatable. Well, we have that same kind of idea in lots of goods. If anybody still has an electronics catalog from the year